Okay, so we begin now chapter 2 of the Tzemach Tzedek's mitzvah Haamonas Elokus, Tzemach Tzedek's analysis of the mitzvah to believe in God. So where we left off is, essentially, we're looking at two levels at the moment in our relationship with the divine, or knowledge of the divine, or awareness of the divine. And it comes down to what is a mitzvah and what is obvious. The mitzvah is that which is not obvious. God is commanding you to know something or to believe in something that isn't obvious. And then there's the thing you know, which is already known to you because it's known to you because you can already rationalize your way through it. So, faith, which is commanded to you, something you don't know on your own. And then there is that which is knowable. And he explained, the knowable is what Kabbalah refers to as mamale, namely this idea that God is the life force that animates all of creation. In the same way I know that my physical flesh is animated by a metaphysical, transcendent soul, for lack of a better word, a soul or a conscious that animates the physical body. So likewise, I see a livingness in the entire universe. So there's a life force that pumps through it, and this life force is the known God. And then we're commanded to believe, to have faith in that which is unknowable beyond. Okay? So in the chapter 2, we're going to delve deeper into what it means to know, what exactly we know, and then what it means to believe. Why this knowing is so important in terms of our relationship with God. We spoke a little bit about this last week, how emotions are created by that knowing. We're going to talk about that more today. And then how that can affect our Torah mitzvahs, this knowing of God. And we're going to introduce a new component, which is understanding. So we have knowing, understanding, and believing. We spoke a little bit about understanding before, but we're going to talk more about that now, the difference between understanding versus knowing.
Which one's yada?
Is to know. Dat is to know. Bina is to understand. Lahavin, lahasig, to comprehend or to know, to understand. And then there is lahamin, to believe. So we're going to talk a little bit more about understanding versus knowing. That's going to help us sharpen our understanding of what knowing means. Okay, so let's read that in Hebrew, or you can follow it in English. Ach lahavin. However, the following requires explanation. Delachora, for seemingly, yesh stira lidvarenu ela. One can raise a contradiction to that which we have said till now. Namely, shemetzias Hashem, that the existence of God, v'yoser mechaya olam, and that He is the life force of the world. Eina b'chlal amuna. We stated in chapter 1 that this knowing, this fact that God animates and is the life force of creation, is not something that's in the realm of faith. Elav chinas das mamish. We said it's literally known or knowable. So one might contradict that proposition. Mimaymar hayidua, from that which is well known in the Zohar, the less machshava tfisa beklal. End quote. This is a direct quote from the Zohar, which is quoted all over Chassidus. Namely, no thought can possibly comprehend God. Okay, so after the little advertisement, mashma, the implication here is created beings cannot comprehend God, but in their knowledge or comprehension. Okay, so if the Zohar is stating emphatically that God is inherently unknowable, so what does this mean? I just finished saying to you that there's something known about God.
Is this true for the great Rabbanim, for Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and the great Rabbanim that followed him?
Okay,
or is it just true today?
It's true, period, of anything, as we're gonna learn soon. We're gonna see soon. Yes, we'll see what the qualifications of this are. But this idea, les machshava tfisa be, is an unqualified statement that applies even to transcendental, intellectual beings known as angels. God is inherently unknowable.
A question. The vastness of the Abishur is so beyond that the little bit that we know. Is that considered nothing? Is that what we're referring to?
Okay, we're going to see. You're going to explain.
I'm asking because we do know some things, even though it might be negligible and completely non-existent in the whole understanding, but we do know something.
So we're going to explain. We're going to explain. That's the step we're going to explain that, which is that inherently God is knowable, unknown. Even that which you know is not really known. He's going to explain. He's going to explain what that means. And this is where the distinction between comprehension versus knowing. Where you're going to know things. Okay, we're gonna get there. Okay. In the context, so we're going to see the difference between knowing and comprehension. Because the language of the Zohar is les machshava tfisa be. No thought can grasp it. So grasping is one thing and knowing is another. Namely, you can know things that you have no grasp of. That's what we're about to explain. But before, in other words, he's presenting it as like a contradiction. We just finished saying you know God as the life force of creation, and the Zohar says it's unknowable. How do we resolve that? We're going to resolve that by making a distinction between knowing and grasping. So we're going to explain.
Knowing and accepting.
He's going to explain it all. Okay, but so knowing, grasping, and faith. It's going to become clear. It's going to become clear.
I get you. Yeah.
It's going to become very clear. Knowing, grasping, and faith, and what is which. It will explain.
Grasping simply is understanding.
Correct. Okay. So let's see. However, the truth is, this statement to the Zohar, which says that God is unknowable, does not destroy our proposition that you know God as, or ungraspable. God is ungraspable. It's not a contradiction to the fact that we have stated that you know God as the life force of creation. And everything is, he's lifting the words of the Siddur at the end of Shema. Emes v'yatzev, it's true and upright. Everything remains in its place. Navahu, and this will be understood. Alpi Masha Kasav Rambam, based on that which Rambam writes, that the Creator, Hu Hayadua, Mitziyusai, V'loi Mahosai. His existence is known, but not his very nature and self is known. Okay? You know something exists versus you know and understand it. Not the same thing. And he's going to explain what the difference is. One is knowing something versus understanding something. They're not the same thing at all. Right? So if I meet a person for the first time, I know the person exists. I got no understanding of the person whatsoever. But I know it exists. Right? The same thing is true of, we discover a new species of fish or something, so we know it exists. We don't understand it yet until we learn about it. So there's knowing something versus understanding something. And he's going to explain the difference.
You can look in the sky and you can see stars. Doesn't mean you understand what you're looking at.
I don't understand anything.
Right.
But I know what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
And that's what
Here
we're
it's
going
not even looking. Like, it's like I know a fish exists without seeing.
We're going to make a
fish
distinction there at all. We're going to make that distinction as well. To seeing something, which is going to be 4 levels. Seeing something, knowing something, understanding something, believing in something. So we're going to make that distinction also soon.
But where was Avram on that board?
He's going to explain.
Okay.
He's going to explain. He's not going to mention Avram, but he'll mention others by name.
No.
He'll mention others.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I'm just trying to...
When you're talking about God, Avram discovering God?
Yeah.
On the knowing level. He
On
looks
the
at the
knowing
world.
level?
Yes, because he sees. Okay, we'll explain. You'll see in a minute. Okay. Now, v'chein hu b'chol sifrei emes. This is the same thing is true of all of Kabbalistic work, referred to as the books of truth. So Rambam comes to approaches this as from a philosophical perspective, that God's existence is known, but not his nature, not his self is known. And Kabbalah substantiates this view coming from the Kabbalistic perspective, but nonetheless is still of the same position that knowing God is that understanding God is ungraspable, but there is something you can know. He explains, and our intention in this is, Shanachnu, that us, human beings, or any created being, mitzad puloisav, because of its behavior, because of God's actions and what he's done, that we know shunim, so we know it exists. But we don't know what it is and what its nature is. So we see creation, so we conclude there's a creator. It doesn't mean we understand the creator. We know it exists because look, there's a creation, so there must be a creator. But it doesn't mean we know who the creator is and what that is and what the nature is. So we know its existence, we don't understand it though. That's what he's going to explain further. Of this, the verse reads, could you investigate God and then figure it out? Not going to happen. Okay, now let's now explain further what it means to know something, to know its existence, but not to understand its existence, not to understand its nature. Move on. This will be understood. Gamkein likewise, with the same analogy we gave above, the analogy of my body.
Thank you.
Bless you. The analogy of the body being enlivened by a soul that's invested in it. That's an analogy will help us understand the distinction between knowing something versus understanding it. So, a person knows and feels that he has a livingness within him. And why do I know that? Because I feel and see a living body. This too is only knowing the existence of a life force that's in the flesh. It's known to the person, certainly and clearly, that there's a conscious livingness in his body. That's clear to him. He does not know the actual nature of that soul, what it is. I don't know what it is. I think I mentioned this last time. My 2-year-old and I have equal non-understanding of what consciousness is. But we are both equally certain that it exists. He doesn't have the word consciousness for it, but he's certainly aware that he's there. and I'm aware that I'm here, and I have no better understanding of what that means that I have a consciousness. I don't. Because my relationship to the life force that's in my body is not one of comprehension. It's one of just factual knowledge that it is there, that understanding what it is. Right? Moreover, the gamma filu echos hipslabshusa beguf, even the nature of the quality, the nature of its investment within the body in an idea echu. I don't even know how that works. Not only do I not know what conscious livingness is, I don't even know how conscious livingness can animate a body. I just know it's there. How that works, how does this transcendent, non-knowable, undefined thing then get invested in a physical, corporeal body that I can touch and slap? How does that work? No clue. I just know it's there. But I don't understand it at all. As he continues, even though I know with certainty that the livingness is invested in all 248 limbs of my body, I know that for a fact. How do I know? Because the moment the idea comes in my mind, to move my leg, my leg will move. Take it immediately, without any delay, instantaneously. Which means there's a livingness in my leg. And the second I want it, it's activated. If my livingness, my soul, was only in my heart and mind, only, and from there, from the mind and the heart, my desire to move my foot would then travel there, and then the leg will respond. If that were the case, there would be some sort of delay. From the time she is sipuk, that should be enough time, that my desire should go from my mind to my heart to my leg. We see it instantaneously, which means livingness extends the entirety of the body. We see the opposite. The very instant that my decision is made to move my leg, that's when my leg moves. I'm only aware of that in my head, it's true, and therefore the awareness and process of all this desire is in my head, but the actual desire to move is in my leg, and thus it moves the second I want it, without any delay whatsoever. Mizara, from here is proof, or this indicates, that thought is to be found even in the foot. It's quite the way to think about this is, in biological terms, is like there's the brain, but the brain doesn't exist in isolation from the rest of the body. Right? The brain has literally like tentacles in the entire body. We call them nerve endings, right? And there's like an instantaneous singularity between all the nerve endings that demonstrate that the self is not in the head, and from there it extends to my fingers. The self is my entire body, and constantly in communication with each other because they just all exist as one singular unit called me everywhere. Right? It's not like I exist here, and then my existence in my head travels to my toe. I exist in my entire body, even if the command center happens to be my head. And therefore there's like instantaneous communication rather than delayed communication. Right? Which is it. Okay, so now therefore, the Hinin is bar.
I don't understand exactly where do you go with that? I'm not.
The point he's trying to get to is
the brain is the place in which
the command center
messages are being sent, and it's sent. It's like a hardwired, if you want to like use terminology, like it's to your entire body. But
correct.
It still starts here, and
right.
The message is
The point he's saying is that my livingness is in everywhere in my body. Mm-hmm. It's not my livingness is not less in my head or less in my toe than it is in my head. Mm-hmm. Even if my awareness of it is more in my head, right? And what indicates that is the fact that there's an absolutely instantaneous connection between the farthest 2 points in my body.
Well, we know
right? Because isn't it? Sorry.
There's intelligence in the body. There's a lot of new research that they're coming up with.
Specifically in the gut nowadays, but yes, that's true.
But the whole body is like holds on to things. There's like the body is all interconnected, and even the whole idea of quantum, where everything is interrelated. It's like we're not just in one place. We're kind of it's all over. So
then
I
how
feel
do
like the
you
body
explain-
can
Sorry?
that way too.
So then how do you explain the soul being in the entire body when people are paralyzed?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. And Chassidus discusses that. So actually, it's a really good question. And Chassidus makes the point about people who are blind. Let's say a person is born blind. Because let's start with a person who becomes blind later in life. So to that, it's something to the effect of the recipient of that life energy is damaged and therefore cannot contain the life force that the soul is trying to give to it. The soul is trying to give it vision, and something in there is not allowing it to receive that vision. Right? Like the light is not going to the vessel. It's the language of Chassidus. Yeah. So what happens to someone who's born blind? Now here, the proof that Chassidus takes that the person's self actually contains all livingness undisturbed is the fact that two blind people can have children who are completely visual. Which means somewhere in them, vision exists.
Yes.
It just, somewhere between the communication of their self that has vision and their body is a miscommunication, and therefore their eyes can't see. Either there's a miscommunication and there's something wrong in the communication, or the vehicle itself is missing some tool that doesn't allow it to operate the person's ability to see, but the ability to see is contained within the essence of the person. Proof of the fact is that they can have children who can see, even though they don't.
Same thing with people who are born deaf or who become deaf.
Correct.
I'm just thinking of
Fully auditory
like
children,
there was
correct.
a very religious person that I know whose
Yeah.
body decomposed over time.
Yeah.
And he ended up being a nothingness on the day that he passed.
Right.
But apparently he had full consciousness. So how do you define
So right. So Chassidus will argue that
that long illness?
yeah,
Where is the
it's completely and fully in his body, but something in his body is not allowing him to derive the energy that the consciousness is providing, considering its breakdown and its weakness. In other words, that even a completely comatose patient can, in theory, produce fully functional offspring.
I don't know about that.
Not they can't because their body is not functioning. But the DNA is not. It's not right. But the like you can if they did like
you take the DNA. And
not even if you took a sperm sample and you impregnated a woman, you can have a fully functioning human, not a comatose human.
okay.
Right? Because the inherent essential self is in existence, even if the functionality is deteriorated.
I don't know. I don't feel like this analogy is a biology example. I do feel like someone could have a damage in their DNA. They pass on the damaged DNA to their child, who will still have an issue. But I think the soul is perfect. I think this living force
That's
has
not
nothing to do
precisely.
with the DNA.
No,
The
well,
living
I'm
force
saying
is
right.
full.
That's right. The point here is the living force. Correct. The living force is full.
I'm talking about the
but
expression
sorry.
of the living force. The expression of the
And
living
if-
force has been
But if
Muted?
the inherent livingness was not fully functional, you can extract as much DNA as you'd like, it wouldn't work.
yeah, so
It wouldn't work. So right, because the full livingness of the human is still there, even if it's not functioning. Anyway, it's a little off topic, but that's the main point there. Yeah.
I don't know how to
what?
make that connection
Where are we missing?
because you're saying that it's in the entire body. Okay, Baruch Hashem, I understand that, I get
You're
that, but I don't understand how that living soul is still in the person that's living that is can no longer function. So someone had a brainstem injury
Yeah.
and can no longer function, nothing like a comatose person, but it's still in the living soul. So the entire body is no longer the vessel.
So let's say
For
that's what death is, right?
This energy.
That's what death is. That
No,
the energy
the person is
Right,
the
but-
heart is beating.
right, but death is the complete extraction of that life force from the body.
Correct.
So now it's not fully extracted, but something. Let's imagine it this way: you have a phone in which electricity is running completely and fully, but somewhere in the hardware is not allowing it to make the screen work. But doesn't make electricity not running through the entire phone. It is just something in the wiring, something in the software that's not communicating properly. That's not allowing it to function. But there's still electricity running through the entire phone.
So you have
in
to
theory.
think of it as a vessel.
For the life force, correct. So even if the vessel is damaged, it's deteriorated, then it's not going to extract the life force that the soul has.
Yeah, and it also says we cannot clearly understand how the soul encloses
That's the
body
point,
and
right.
body. So like we can't.
That's what we're
clearly
about to make,
understand
but
it,
right, but we have to understand though. The point he's making is like this: I know my life force is in my body, even if I don't understand how it works. But I know it's there
Okay.
because look at me.
Yeah.
My life force is everywhere, even in my fingers. It's there, even though I have no clue how it got there. That's the point he's making.
Even
I can
if
know
it's just
correct. I
something
can
bad.
know something without understanding it whatsoever. That's the point. Okay, so end the fourth to last line. V'hinen is barer. So now it has become clear. Mitzius is bashtas ohen nefesh b'chol levar yaguf. The fact that the life force of the soul is extended in the entire body. The imkos, and nonetheless, I do not understand at all how that investment happens. And I certainly don't know what it is itself. I don't know how that life force invests in the body, and I don't even know what that life force is. This is what it means to know something's existence, but not to understand its very nature. So I know it, without any comprehension. So same thing is true of God may be blessed. We know its existence. We know with certainty that there's a creator, source of life, which gives life and brings into being all of existence. Because I see existence, so there's a source of existence, and there's life in existence, so there's a life running through it. But the very nature of that life force is not known to me. Of this, the Zohar says, no knowledge can grasp him. Tfisa litvos, to grasp. There's no grasp on God, even if there's knowledge. But so by the intent here is to comprehend God's very nature. This is not comprehensible to any created being, period. Even the greatest of sages and scholars. It's beyond inherent comprehension. As the verse reads, God tells Moshe Rabbeinu, you're not going to see my face. So you know my existence, but you're not going to understand me. Right? So therefore, now, so we clear so far? So Avram Avinu, if you want to go to Avram Avinu, he discovered this knowledge that there's a living force in creation. As opposed to paganists who said there's multiple living forces competing, Avram Avinu looked around the world and said, no, there's a singular living force in creation. So but that doesn't give him better comprehension. Yeah.
Knowledge, but
not comprehension. Because it's inherently incomprehensible. It's inherently incomprehensible to any created being. Okay. V'hinei das, b'lashon haTorah. When we use the terminology das, which means to know, in Torah's language, then when you know it's referring to the knowledge of its existence. So whenever you see in the Torah the word know, that equals knowing its existence. But to comprehend the thing itself, more appropriately to use the word to see something. Now we're introducing a new element. So let's use the example of a copy machine. So you can believe someone who tells you that there's a new invention called the copy machine because you never heard of it in your life. That's one level. So you have no knowledge of it. You don't know it exists. You don't understand it certainly, and you don't have any relationship with it. But someone tells you, you trust the person. Copy machines exist. Good, believe the guy. Level 1. Level 2 is someone explains to me what it does. Right? Or let's say, how would we do this with this example? Doesn't really work. Because, let's just go to the second stage. Then I see it. What's my knowledge of it now? Now that I saw the copy machine work. I don't believe in it anymore. I have a much deeper knowledge of it because I see it. Do I have better comprehension of it? Absolutely not. I have no idea how it functions. My knowledge of it is now much more intimate because I see its actual being right here. Right? So I don't just know its existence, I know it.
That's das?
That's to see it. It's more than das. So das and to see are two levels. To know something that I don't see is dat. I know that I exist. I know that I have this life in me. And to know something that I see is much deeper. Right? So my knowledge of, let's say my knowledge of the copy machine is deeper than my knowledge of your livingness. Because your livingness, A, I don't see, and B, I don't understand what livingness is. Whereas the copy machine, I know it, I see it, it's right there, I functioned, I've used it. Right? Even though I have no understanding of it. Yeah? You're clear?
Mm-hmm. So Kriyat Yam Suf, for example, was an event so that
where they saw godliness.
So they saw who could correct. Show his godliness.
So no comprehension, but seeing.
World,
correct.
In order to strengthen the Emunah, or in order to strengthen.
Good question.
Knowledge.
I would say it's there to strengthen knowledge, as we're going to see in a minute. To strengthen knowledge, because we're going to see momentarily that knowledge is more powerful than faith. It's much more intimate. I know its existence, not just relying on some information that's told to me. I know it. If I see it, it's an even deeper knowing.
When you see it,
it's a deeper knowing.
Okay.
So now I know it, not just know it because I feel it and concluded that it's there.
There's know about, and there's knowing.
Right. So know about is Do I know about my consciousness? It's much more than that. I know it because I feel it.
I know it.
But that
I know about the coffee machine before I see it.
I believe it because someone told me about it.
Right.
It's a belief, right? But knowing something that I see is of a much stronger certainty than knowing something because I sense it's there, considering that as results. In other words, the results of creative force is creation, so I know God exists because I see a livingness in creation. But I've never seen it. Now when I see it, that's a Kriyas Yamsuf, now I see it. So I don't believe in it, I never believed in it, I always knew it was there. But now my knowledge of it is much deeper because I've seen it. Even if I have no comprehension of it. My knowledge of it is much, much deeper because I've seen it now. Like if I were to see the consciousness in me, how much deeper would I feel alive?
That's not really seeing God though. Like imagine we'd be able to see each other's souls. Like that would be seeing God. Like we actually be able to see some light or whatever. That would be
whatever
like,
that is. Whatever that visual looks
you know
like.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
okay, so you get to that in a second.
How can we ever see God?
You wouldn't. Panel, you'll never see my face. That was the verse, right?
So these miracles are just like little glimpses of like.
So a miracle, it depends what you're seeing in a miracle. But Kriyas Yamsuf is much more than a miracle because Kriyas Yamsuf was a revelation. Or the splitting, or let's say God speaking at Sinai was also a revelation.
Right.
And they couldn't handle it, which is why they all died every time God spoke, because you can't handle that level of revelation. Right? You can't handle that. We cannot handle being exposed to God's being your own reality. We can know it. You can know it as we just finished saying, because you see a reality of life, etc., but you cannot experience that and maintain yourself, which is why they all died. Every time God spoke, souls expired.
So that's Rabbi. They
That's
basically
to see.
saw God
Correct.
at that moment.
It's much deeper than knowing because I feel it and sense it, and I see the results of that of it, which is my knowledge right now of God. As I see the results of it, because I see creation.
So many questions in my head right now.
Yeah, let's go step by step, right? Okay, so let's see. Let's keep on saying. Shechush ha'ois, the ability to see something, who kalila hasagas mosad davar muchash, is then to truly grasp the very nature of the thing itself, because I see it. But to know something is hasagas hametzius, is only to grasp that it exists, not to know it. When I see it, I'm much closer to knowing it than when I know its existence. So now, therefore it says, we began in the last chapter, we quoted a verse which says, "For my flesh I see God." And we explained that it was seeing in the mind's eye, because I see in my flesh a physical body, but there's a livingness. So therefore in the mind's eye I can perceive that there's livingness in creation, and therefore there's a livingness to that's God. Now, we use the language of seeing there, but we just finished saying that seeing and knowing is not the same. Knowing is a step down. So he explains, that's why the verse uses the terminology echze, which is the translation of re'iyah in Hebrew, to tell you that it is a seeing, but it's a step down from seeing, because you're seeing in the mind's eye, not actual seeing. Sorry?
The actual word echse is like a vision.
Correct.
Like a,
But that word echze, which means a vision, is actually a translation. It's an Aramaic translation of the original word, which is re'iyah, to see. Lerot. So to tell you that it's a step down from actual seeing, even when you say someone has a vision. What you mean by that is that it's a conceptual vision, not an actual seeing something. When I'm looking at the Grand Canyon, I don't say I have a vision of the Grand Canyon. I see the Grand Canyon. If I say I have a vision, it's because it's in my head. So it's a step down from actually seeing.
You can still deny its existence. If you have a vision, then you can kind of talk yourself out of it. It's not
Because it's conceptual. Correct.
You can picture
Because it's still
it.
conceptual. So even though my relationship to that thing is akin to seeing, because I don't understand it, but I see its existence, I see the result of God's creation, but still it's not the same level as actually seeing something. And thus, when the verse uses to describe that I see God from my flesh, it uses the translation rather than the original to tell you to step down. That's what he explains. Shutargo v'acharayim, it is a translation, and therefore, like the backside, a step down, shal re'iyah of actual vision. Ki hariyah hi hasagas hamohos, because to see something is to understand and comprehend itself. Vadas, but to know it, is to hasagas hametzius, is only to comprehend its existence, not to comprehend it. Ulachfi. Let's see how far we can go. Okay, we'll do a few more lines. And because when it comes to God himself, it's impossible to comprehend the thing itself. All we have is knowledge of its existence. Therefore the term echza is used, which is targum, which is a translation, and therefore the backside, the flip side, step down, shall re'iyah of actual vision. Okay, so let's recap what we have, and we'll set ourselves up for next week. What we have so far is, last week we separated between something that's known versus something you believe because you have to take it on authority. Now he's adding another element, or two more elements. Number one, there's a difference between understanding something and knowing something. We know things with certainty, even though we have no understanding of it whatsoever. And going back to the original example, we know we are alive, although we have no comprehension of that whatsoever. So the same thing is true of our knowledge of God. We know there's a life force running through all of existence because we see it's alive. We have no comprehension of what that means at all. A, so that's one step down already. It's not understanding, it's knowing its existence. And B, it's also a step down because it's not actual vision. It's conceptual vision, not actual vision. If we're actual vision, we'll be much more certain. And yet, as we'll explain next week, we still use the terminology vision because the certainty of it is like a vision, even though it isn't a vision. So the certainty of my existence is, I'm as certain of my existence as I am of this table, even though I see this and I don't see my own life. So because the certainty of knowing something is akin to the certainty of seeing something, therefore we use the terminology to see, but it's one step down from seeing. And therefore the translation is used rather than re'iyah to actually see.
It's a clear picture in your mind. Basically.
Clear picture in your mind.
There was a
Correct.
survivor. She was like saying her story. She's like, I saw Hashem that day when I was asleep. Like she was saying,
Right.
I saw.
So what did she mean by that?
Exactly. Like, she didn't see Hashem, but she saw it.
She
in
knew.
I mean, she meant the certainty of God's presence was certain to her as if she saw it, right? So that's also this enjoining us to say the certainty of God's presence should be that certain, considering the same way you are certain of your own existence because you see life pumping through your body, there's a certainty of life pumping through the universe. There's a certainty to that. And that's the certainty with which we should know God, even if it's not vision, and it's certainly not comprehension.
And that's the baseline. That's not even a mitzvah. That's just
That's not even a
something
mitzvah,
that
that's
should
the
just
baseline.
happen on its own.
But we'll address, yeah. But we're going to learn next week, actually, that to a degree our relationship with God is more contingent on this knowledge. Because we're going to learn that that's where any emotional attachment we have to God is going to come from that knowing rather than the faith. Because faith is too abstract. I have no words for it, I have no feeling, no connection to it, okay, I accept it. But something that I know and feel, if I focused on it and thought about it, that would actually generate an attached emotion, and as we're going to learn, can actually enliven and give life and excitement and passion to my mitzvah. Because I'm excited about the connection I have with this livingness, rather than connection to some transcendent that I have no idea what it is.
Can I ask
Yeah.
about something? Kadosh Baruch Hu actually may not have given Moshe face to face, but Moshe saw the back of his head.
And the backside of seeing is to know. So we just learned.
Okay. But the fact that he saw, that Moshe saw, that Rabbi Moshe saw.
Yeah.
He didn't actually see. His
So what does it
back.
mean to see? What did he mean he saw? Like
Well,
his
at one
eyes?
point in the Torah, Hashem says to, I don't remember who, how can you talk about Moshe because he's the only one that I've spoken to face.
Yeah.
And then it says that
No one could see my face.
no one can see my face. Yeah, I showed
Great
my
question.
backside. Okay, the point that Rabbeinu Moshe had the zchut of seeing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at that point, does it make is it knowledge or emunah? Like, because he saw,
It's the same thing as
Does
people
he-
seeing it. I would argue it's the same thing as people seeing at the sea, at splitting the sea, where our knowledge of God's presence in reality becomes much more certain because we saw it, rather than know it because we're deducting from the fact that there's a creation, therefore there's a creator. So the certainty of that knowledge, in other words, let's put it this way.
but his certainty was so much more pashut because he didn't have to work for it.
So well, I don't know what work he did or didn't do, but let me put it this way: the knowledge and the seeing. He's telling us here that the knowledge you have of God is a translation of the word seeing. It's erze, right? Which means they're both the same thing, but one's more clear and one's less clear.
Correct.
So in other words, they're both the same thing in the sense that the certainty of its existence is absolute, but they're very different in how I got there. I got there because I see it, or I got there because I see the results of it, and therefore I must conclude it's there. So for the rest of us, we see a livingness in creation, we see the results, we must conclude it's there. For Moshe Rabbeinu, for people who are at the splitting of the sea, they didn't have to do that. They saw it. So the certainty of that knowledge is much deeper. But they're really two sides of the same coin, which is why it's re'iyah seeing, and then echza, the translation, because they're both really the same, they're in the same camp. So in other words, if we want to make three categories, it would be knowing, understanding, faith. Now within knowing, there's two types of knowing. There's knowing because you see it, and there's knowing because I see the results of it.
Did they merit it?
We are seeing the results of it. They were seeing it. And that's the splitting of the sea.
Because they merited seeing it?
Because Hashem decided to give it to them.
But I'm just going to say, we haven't covered it yet, but hearing is also part of...
We haven't covered hearing.
I'm saying that
Hearing usually in Chassidus is akin to comprehension.
But it's
You hear some explanation, you understand it. So hearing is comprehension.
I'm saying, but when the Abishua spoke to Moshe, he was hearing it.
But
So it's another way of.
Sorry?
I know.
Right, which again, they all passed away when they happened because they couldn't seeing that. Right?
But he was.
Yes, they saw the sounds, correct. They saw the sounds.
But she has a good point.
No, we haven't gotten to hearing yet, so I don't want to.
Hearing is comprehension.
I don't want to jump the guns. I'm just saying there's a few more elements in that whole thing you're trying to understand before we come to all of them. I'm just saying,
Hearing is
try to like put it on hold and know it's hard until we get to the hearing part. Maybe there'll be some other.
Hearing is comprehension.
Yes.
Which is why it says that they saw the sound. Sound is usually that which you comprehend, and here they saw that which you usually hear about.
Right.
So usually I know about this thing God created in the world because I hear about it, and because I see and deduce, now they saw it. So they saw that which you usually heard, right? Which is why they couldn't handle it. The soul's expired because they can't handle seeing that. The verse which says, "No one will see my face," concludes, "Lo yirani adam v'chai." No one will see me and live. Because if you see, you cease to exist. You absorb in that truth. You cannot exist as an independent being in face of
What's
that.
interesting is that some people, see music. They actually see colors. They see things they
Right.
understand differently.
But I don't know if the vision of that is like the vision or it's the mind's eye.
Exactly.
It's the mind's eye. So it's the same. So and the Tzemach Tzedek is telling us we should have that kind of knowledge of God because you see. And next week, he's going to give us actual visuals. He can tell us to visualize it.
Yeah.
He's going to tell us to visualize that knowledge of livingness pumping through creation. Right? You can close your eyes and envision life force running through your body. So close your eyes and envision life force running through all the universe. He's going to tell us to do that next week, actually.
Could you tie this in to the beginning where we were talking about the different mitzvos?
It's okay. So what we're going to is we're defining the things that are not the mitzvah, right? Because the mitzvah is to have faith. So okay. So what are the things I know before faith? So he's giving us more and more definition of what it is I know about God before I'm told to have faith in that transcendent.
But
So
the
give us-
Rambam has two definitions of
Knowing and okay.
knowing. So I'm just like, I don't know if
Yeah.
we're going to tie it in at the end.
It will become tied. It will become tied in, yeah. But essentially, the mitzvah of knowing, the mitzvah of believing is easy, believing that which is transcendent, and the mitzvah of knowing is okay. Spend time to visualize that which you just said you know,
Okay.
and connect with it.
So part of knowing is a mitzvah.
It's correct. The active is not the information, but the connecting to the information, which we learned last week. The word dot means to connect, and we're going to talk about that more next week as well, and give us more visualization to understand. Okay, so that's somewhat clear. Hope we answered more questions than asked. And
Sorry.
that's okay. No, it's like hopefully we got more answers than questions. There's going to be questions unanswered, but at least we have some answers. At least, yeah.
Thank you.
The Hebrew grammar question.
Yeah.
The word to know, that is it the same word as when it says like when a husband and wife know each
Correct.
other? It's the same.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. The first time Torah uses the word know is when Adam knew Eve.
And what
Because
is
it's
that?
intimate knowledge,
What
not
is that?
informational
Right, so
knowledge.
That's what I'm saying. And so that
what it
knowing
means.
is which one? Is which knowledge?
Yes. So it's to intimately know something.
It's
Just-
you actually
you can,
know them, not just.
it works in English. Someone who's wise, you ask them for advice. Someone who's understanding,
Yes.
talk to them. Someone who knows you, you marry them. Right? They know you, that's who you want to marry. Because or maybe the reverse. You marry them and then you know them more than just understand them and
Yeah, I
hear
feel
their
like
advice.
that's to experience.
To experience, to truly have an
Feel
intimate connection with it.
like
That's right.
inside of you,
That's right.
know?
Adam knew Eve is the description of their intimacy. That's correct.
I like that.
Yeah.
Experience.
Experience it.
Experience it, yes. Yeah.
Feel it.
So okay, so we're gonna get to that. Okay, that will be discussion next week, yes. That's the discussion next week. Okay. Have a wonderful week, everybody.
Thank